Okay, welcome back, everybody, to the second shir of the series, discussing what actually was the Nes of Chanukah, what actually was not only the Nes of Chanukah, but also the story of Chanukah, the situation, the war, the battle, what was the machlokas, what was the argument. And just to recap, yesterday we discussed the rise of Hellenism, which was the rise of two things. One of the things very, very important was the rise of philosophy, where the people would learn to drill down to the bottom of trying to understand what something is, what it's made of, what it's comprised of, what it could be used for. The deeper you understand something, means the deeper you get to what it is at the core, the more you're able to use it for many other things. And the benefits that we're having till today from the rise of philosophy. Philosophy really is the father of science in a way. The difference very technically is that philosophy is more abstract because they don't have, it's not fact based to that extent versus science, which is very fact based, but it's not something, it's what they call in English beyond the scope of what we're going to discuss today, or what we discussed yesterday as well. And also we discussed the rise of philosophy and the rise of sports, of a very large focus on the human body, on human pleasure, of strength, of sports, of that whole culture that went around the concept of this world. They're not worrying about Olam Haba. This world being the most important thing to focus on. We mentioned the benefit of the rise of philosophy, and we mentioned the major chisaron, the major chisaron being the obvious one, that it despises, philosophy despises anything that can't be understood. And it comes to this hanocha pshuta that anything that's higher than that for you, there's no such thing as higher than understanding. It's not even something you need to address, not even something you need to discuss. You need to achieve the highest of your understanding. Anything other than that is looked down upon in philosophy, which is obviously absurd. It's obviously not true, because just because something is not something you understand today, it's not something you won't understand tomorrow. And if it's something that's impossible for you to understand, it doesn't mean that it's impossible for somebody else to understand. And if you can't understand it, you can know that it exists. So it's not, or if you can't even know that it exists, but there are people that can know that it exists as a fact. So this whole notion of there not being higher than seichel is ultimately absurd. But in order for science, in order for science or for philosophy, in order for these for them to focus solely on that idea, they come with this hanocha that you can't say hecher from verstand. You can't say higher than seichel, because it's not gonna. They look at it as an excuse rather than as an acknowledgement to what's real. This is what we discussed yesterday. We talked about this. I got a few questions afterwards. A few people wanted to know, am I saying that science is fake? Of course I'm not saying that science is fake. But what I'm saying is, and nobody's saying that. There are facts. Facts, you're not arguing with facts. The question is what those facts mean. Whether your interpretation of those facts are real is an entirely different story. I'll give you one example. Somebody once wrote to the Rabbi about evolution, that they found that they asked, what about the fact that they're finding bodies, bones and all things from people look like humans, but they're formed a bit differently. So the Rebbe writes back to him, who says that there wasn't another Nivra? A few thousand years ago, the Rebbe created a Nivra that looks very similar. Look at a monkey today. If you're going to find the bones of a monkey, so you could put into your mind, maybe it was a human that looked different. The Rebbe writes to him, who says that the Eibusha didn't create a different type of Nivra? Somewhere between, if you can have a monkey and you can have a human, you can have a Nivra that's in between, that's now extinct. It's the loy medover mitoich dover. It's the fact that you learn one thing from another thing, or the fact that what they call carbon date things. Yeah, who said that? Another example, who said that there wasn't kufris l'moshel during B'riyas Ha'olam, that things happen much faster. So we're using today's methodology of aging versus to try and understand the age of something else. That's called, you have a fact, The fact is what something looks like, and then you have what actually happened, which could be something very, very different. You can have a fact that they found that they find bodies that look different than the human body. Their interpretation is that the human came from that. Says that it's an interpretation. It's not the real interpretation. It's not the fact. The fact is, they should create a different nivra. They should create a different metzius. That's one option. That's the option that Rabbi gives. I'm sure there's other svaris of what those bones could be. So it's important to differentiate. What science does is the typical example of what we discussed yesterday, what Aristotle tends to do, what Aristotle says, which is you have to make your own. It's all in your seichel. It's not, you can't say this I don't know, this I can't understand, this is higher than my understanding, this is something. If it's higher than your understanding, it's for you, it's not true. For you, it's nothing. This nakuda of accepting and of accepting from others, and this nakuda of higher than seichel. Like I'm explaining now, the offshoot of the nakuda of higher than seichel, of not acknowledging higher than seichel, the offshoot is disastrous. It's terrible. It's people that start making certain assumptions based on theories, and they start mixing theories with facts, which becomes, and then even facts. They start interpreting, instead of saying it looks like this, they say it is this. That's a very big problem, because it might not be this. Yeah, you could say what it looks like to you at this moment. You can't say as a fact. If you see the age of something, you could see what it looks like, but you can't say the fact that it is that. And a lot of difficult things can come from these types of assumptions. Roish Verishin is the lack of the lack of emunah. Roish Verishin of the challenges of the Yavonim, of the challenges of philosophy, is that it is the extreme. Yeah, not that I'm trying to understand, or even that I have to understand, but the extreme goes that if I don't understand, then it's not real. This extremism is where there becomes a very big problem. So like in everything in life, there's good and there's bad, and you have to see where something leads to. And we've seen in a number of areas where it leads to terrible things. Sports, theoretically, is not only is not bad, sports is very healthy. If you're playing in break because you want it, because it's healthy, is brilliant. When it becomes all encompassing, like Rabbi Gordon likes to say. There's a bacher that plays football is fine. A football player that also learns in yeshiva is a problem. This is where so like in everything there's extremism, and you have to be very careful when it comes to certain things. Now we have to look where did philosophy lead to? Where did this focus on the sports lead to? And this is where we're getting to now in Eretz Yisrael, in the fight between. This is where we're getting to now in the story of Chanuka. So we established yesterday that the real, so far what we've learned is that the rise of philosophy of the rise of philosophy triggered a philosophy of Hellenism, a philosophy of a focus on the human, whether physical, whether academic. That rise was the beginning of the challenges. Now, what goes on in Greece, what goes on in Mitzrayim, what goes on in these areas, what's the difference? Ultimately, what's the difference to the Yid? And for years, nothing seeped into Eretz Yisrael. I shouldn't say nothing seeped in. We became, in Eretz Yisrael, they certainly became, like we discussed yesterday, they became a nishpa from the environment. It definitely seeped in, but nothing concrete, nothing. Let's just go through. We're not here to discuss the full story of Chanuka. There are many other people you could listen to for that. Some very, very good sforim and very good presenters that will go through all the history of Chanuka. We're going to run through quickly, though, just to understand, just to get the story and to see exactly what happens to get to discuss the thing. So let's just run through about 75 years of history briefly before we begin. Now, if we mentioned yesterday that after Alexander was killed or died, his kingdom was divided into 4 parts. The two parts that are very negea to us is the kingdom of Seleucus, which is the Syrian Greeks, and the kingdom of Ptolemy, or Ptolemy in English, the Mitzvah Greeks. At the beginning, in the agreement that they made between these four generals, if you recall, they divided into four parts. The agreement that they made between these four generals, the Syria and Eretz Yisrael, as part of that, all went to Seleucus. It triggered, eventually there became about a 75-year war between Mitzrayim and Syria, if we're going to call them the Talmai Greeks, and the Mitzvah Greeks, and the Seleucan Greeks. Became a big war between them over this area. Now, not all of them had anything to do with Eretz Yisrael. Many of them were over here, where now Lebanon, and into the edge of Syria. This is out of there was 6 battles, or 6 wars, if you want to put it, over that period, and it kept switching hands. We're not going to get through. One time he had it, one time he had it, one time he had it. It kept going back and forth. But during that time, during all this time, the Yidden living in Yerushalayim, it's more or less, they're not really involved in it in any serious way. It's not affecting the Yidden in any serious way. So the culture is seeping in, the culture of philosophy, the culture of sports, but you don't have a university, what we call today university, what they called in those days an academy. You don't have that in Eretz Yisrael. You don't have a place for the sports in Eretz Yisrael, in Yerushalayim either. You don't have these. You don't have it. I mean, it keeps going back and forth. Now, this is the political situation between the Greeks themselves. In Eretz Yisrael, Yerushalayim, who's the leadership of the Yidden? The leadership is divided into 3 parts. You have the Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol, interestingly, well, you have Shimon HaTzadik. Shimon HaTzadik was the Kohen Gadol, was in charge of everything, basically. But after the Stalkus of Shimon HaTzadik, it gets divided. Shimon HaTzadik himself had 2 children. The Gemara discusses, had 2 children. He gave it to the younger one, or could have been the older one, Machlokes in the Gemara. His brother was jealous. There's a whole, and he convinced his brother to put on funny clothes when he did the Avodah, and he chased him away, and then he had to run to Mitzrayim. Chonya, his name was. He runs to Mitzrayim. He makes his own Beis HaMikdash, which seems not to have even been a Beis Avodah Zarah. His kavanah was L'Shem Shamayim. The Kohen Gedolah goes to Shimon HaTzadik's brother Elazar. But at that point, there gets set up in Eretz Yisrael, besides the Kohen Gadol, which, though often at that time, the Tzaddik, he's managing. The Kohen Gadol had to manage the Avodah in the Beis HaMikdash. He had to manage the 24 mishmaros. He was running the operation, a massive operation in the. It wasn't only there was a lot of achrayus in the role. It wasn't only a covered thing. Not only it wasn't only a covered thing, there was also covered involved. There was a massive achrayus. Benoisef Lazeh, he was in a way, the political leader, the Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol had to collect the taxes. Remember, we have to say this over and over again. There is no autonomy over Eretz Yisrael. The Yidden are not in charge of Eretz Yisrael. Until the Churban Bayis Rishon, there was a king and a Kohen Gadol. The king was the political leader, and the Kohen Gadol was the tzaddik. When they come up from Eretz Yisrael, was the spiritual leader. When they come back from Eretz Yisrael, and you had the Nevi'im then also. So even if the Kohen Gadol wasn't, the Navi was involved. But after they come back to Eretz Yisrael, the Kohen Gadol, and there's a few Nevi'im left, and the Kohen Gadol and the Nevi'im are kind of running the show, but the person who organizes the taxes that they have to send back to the government, whether they're sending it back to Persia, or they're afterwards sending it back to Alexander the Great, wherever they're sending it back to, that he has to collect it. He collects it, he gives it, and he makes sure it gets to where it needs to get to. So in addition to the Kohen Gadol now being a political leader, you have who's in charge of who's the spiritual leader, if you want to call it. Who's the Rebbe? Who's the person in charge? So you have the Sanhedrin, and the Rosh of the Sanhedrin, known as the Rosh Av Beis Din, he was the Av Beis Din. He was in charge, but there wasn't only one person. There was two people. There was the Nasi and the Av Beis Din. They were known as the Zugas. Now, the Poil, the Nasi was higher. The Nasi was the final say, but they both had the thing. They ran different parts of Yiddishkeit and Eretz Yisrael at the time. So now you have they have two sets of leadership. The political leadership, which is we're calling it political leadership as if it's like prime minister, nothing to do with that. It's the political leadership running through the Beis Hamikdash. It's running the avodah, the day-to-day avodah, tzaddikim, certainly at the beginning, not just at the beginning, tzaddikim, k'doshim, tahirim, at the beginning, the Mecham L'Shem Shamayim, but they also run the right people to run the tax collection, everything. Honest dimension. So you have the political leadership, Kohen Gadol. I'm using a very grober term for it, but it's just so we can understand it. And then you have just so we can clarify it. And then we have the spirit, the Ruchnistic leadership, which is the Nasi and the Av Beis Din, the Zugas. This is going on all at this time. Okay? We're now going to skip. Just giving you the understanding. There's wars going on over here between this part. At some point, it's actually a period of 6 wars. At some point, they capture this part from them. He captures part from him. It goes back and forth, back and forth. Thing number 1 that's happening. Number 2 is Bechlau. It's not affecting the Yidden in a terrible way much. It's battles really around them. Most of them don't happen over here in Yerushalayim where the Olam is living. Most of them don't happen over there. But Syrian culture is creeping in. Okay? The people in charge of the Yidden of the Ruchnius is the Zugas, and the people in charge of the Yidden in the Ruchnis, the Gashmis, the Avodah Beis Hamikdash, and the tax collection, the political elements, and the dealing, the technicalities, the strategy, all these things, is the Kohen Gadol. Now, there's a Kohen Gadol by the name of Chania, a Yid, from a Yid. He was from the group called, if we have to put these into the group called Chassidim. In Eretz Yisrael, you have becoming very, very strong. At that time, though, you have in Eretz Yisrael becoming very, very strong, what's known as the Messiavnim. The Messiavnim are the Yidden that want to be, they want to be Greeks. To use not nice terminology today, let's not go there. But the Messiavnim are the people that, they're not so frum. Not so frum. They're not frum. They want to be like the Greeks. They've bought into the ideology. They've bought into the ideas. Many of them are not Shomer Torah mitzvahs. Many of them, they spend their days, that they're koching in what the Greeks koch in, and they're traveling out of Yerushalayim to go to the gymnasiums, and many of them are traveling to Athens and to Pasha to study, and there's over a period of 100 years, there's many Yidden that are loving this way of life. The Greek way of life. And we discussed this yesterday. What could the Rabbanim do about it? Nothing. Like what the Rabbanim could do today, which is be moisef and oir. Hey, you could have the Rabbanim that will come out very strongly against it and they'll write letters against it. You'll have other ones that will be moisef and oir. You'll have a bad person that wants to get free publicity for his things. So he's going to get somebody else to write a pashkvil against his bad things, so he'll get more people, whatever. The same thing as happens in today's day and age. And the different ways, the different approaches to dealing with Yidden that are whatever. We're dealing with encouraging Yidden to keep Torah mitzvahs. The Kohen Gadol is Chanya. Now Chanya has his responsibility is Chanya is bepashtus. He's either the son of Shimon HaTzadik. It's machlokas who he is. He's either this son of Shimon HaTzadik that I mentioned before, ran away and opened his own Beis Hamikdash, had to run away from Yerushalayim because his brother Shimon made shtick. He had to run away to Alexandria and make over there his own Beis Hamikdash. Others say that you're talking already 3 generations later, different Chanya, whatever the case is. He's a Fruma Yid, and all is good. He's Mavatal Daito to the Nasi and the Av Beis Din. The problem with Chanya is he has a political rival. By political rival, I mean a political rival, a person who wanted, who was a very big Bar-Plukta with him, who was very, very strongly against him, by the name of Shimon. Shimon wants the job of being the tax collector. He wants that Chanya should run the Beis HaMikdash and make sure everything is the best of the best way. But he wants that he should relinquish the position of tax collector. Tax collector is a very, very strong position. It's not just somebody that takes money can become rich of it. He decides how much tax should be given. He decides it should be taken. He can arrest. He's a very, very powerful person. Shimon is a Misyavni. Shimon himself is not a Fruma person. He wants to get closer to the Greeks. And he's fighting with Chanya, and he travels to Antiochus to convince. He tries to convince Antiochus to get rid of Chanya. Shimon tries to convince Antiochus to get rid of Chanya. Antiochus is going through a very difficult time. Okay, he had a war with Antiochus. He had a war with Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim had conquered Eretz Yisrael in, I think, the 4th battle, the 5th battle. Antiochus comes and tries to conquer, goes into Mitzrayim, tries to conquer Mitzrayim to teach them a lesson that they'll never forget. Mitzrayim appeals to the new rising star, to the new coming superpower, which you can see here at the corner is Rome. So Mitzrayim, Ptolemy, King Talmai appeals to Rome. Rome sends a senator. They don't even send any leadership. Rome sends a senator to Mitzrayim, and when Antiochus arrives, he gets a big bitush because he comes with a big thousands of men behind him. They're planning to conquer the whole thing. They've already conquered the whole part, and he draws this. And he comes in. As he gets to the battlefield, he sees a Roman senator standing in the Roman clothes, like not a soldier in any way. Antiochus knew Rome. Antiochus was there as a political prisoner for many years. His father had to send that. They took him during a different battle. It's not. He was there. He knew their culture. He didn't want to start with them, and he got Bizyonis. He's the big Antiochus that's won already wars with Mitzrayim, and he's conquered other parts. Very successful. And this senator comes in, and he has to get off his horse, Antiochus, whatever he's riding. And the senator draws a line in the sand, and he tells him, "Listen, you come past this line, you're fighting with." Amish takes a stick. The guy dressed in civilian clothes draws a line in the sand and tells him, "You walk past this line, you're declaring war on Rome." Antiochus wasn't prepared to declare war on Rome. He knew what the chance of success in a war against Rome would be for him. So he says he needs to think about it. He's trying to save face, and the Romans weren't going to have it. The Romans draws a circle around him. And Antiochus, and he says, "You're not stepping out of the circle until you decide." The kids say he has big bizyonis, big bushes. He goes back. He goes into the Beis HaMikdash thing. He tries to. There's a whole situation going on. Antiochus isn't a good guy. He hasn't. They've already tried to raid the Beis HaMikdash. Again, we're not getting into all the full details. The point, Antiochus is in a difficult position at the time. So when Chanya travels to him, Shimon sends a message to Antiochus to say Chanya he's good with the Talmai people. He really is sympathetic to Egypt. Yeah, then he's very sympathetic to them. Antiochus doesn't know what to do. Antiochus doesn't want to involve himself until now. Don't even doesn't want to involve himself until now. He's worried about they should pay him the taxes. Antiochus owes a lot of money to not from his time, even from his father's time. They owe a lot of money to Rome, and he needs to pay it off. And he's trying to make wars to be able to raid other people's money. So he sends anyway. So Shimon sends this message to Antiochus. He doesn't tell him that I want to be the tax collector, and therefore, it doesn't put in those words at all. He tells Antiochus that you should know that this Chanya that's coming to you now is very sensitive to the Mitzrayim. In the meantime, Chonya has a brother. Chonya has a brother, a Messiavni. So as Chonya is from the Chassidim, Chonya is from the Frume Yidden, he has a brother, a Messiavni. The Messiavnim had an issue. They wanted to have a gymnasium in Yerushalayim. They wanted to have a seminary in Yerushalayim. They didn't want to have to travel away from Yerushalayim to live the life. They wanted to live the life that they wanted to live in Yerushalayim. They wanted that option. The Chachomim wouldn't let. What do you mean? You're going to build a gymnasium in Yerushalayim? What's in the Meshuggah? For sure, chas v'shalom. A gymnasium is a base of Avodah Zarah, and even if there's no Avodah Zarah in there, the whole build-up of the human body, or the whole thing, it wasn't, the Chachamim were having none of it. Chanya, who was the political leader who had to make these decisions, also wasn't having any of it. And he wasn't allowing it to happen. So the Messiavnim living in Eretz Yisrael, living in Yerushalayim, are very, very, Yerushalayim, I have to differentiate. Eretz Yisrael is a big place, and there's limited borders at that time, yeah? But anyway, like we'll see soon, most of these battles are happening mamish near, not only near Yerushalayim, but on this part. We'll see that later. But the Messiavnim, they want to have they want to have a theater and a sports place in Yerushalayim. The Chacham are not letting. That's in a way why Shimon wants to take over. It's power. But it's not power. He's a Messiavni. He wants to be able to have the power of enforcing, being able to give permission to build this and to build that and to do this, that, and the other. So Shimon sends Jason. Shimon sends Chonyu's brother, Jason, Yoshua, Jason the Messiavni. So they're from the same family. They're from the family of Kohanim Gedolim, from the descendants of Shimon HaTzadik. And he sends him, so he has a claim to, if he was frum, he would be a good, if he was frum and rich and thing, he would be a good candidate for Kohen Gadol. He's technisch, Messiavni, he's not a good candidate as long as it's up to the Chachamim. So he sends, so Yeshua, known as Jason, goes to, travels to Antiochus, and he bribes him. I'm going to show you from a sefer. It's going to take too long. I was going to show you there's a okay. And he bribes Antiochus. He gives him money, and he tells him, and he promises him a few things. Number one is he gives him money. He pays him to become the Kohen Gadol. That's where this Meshugana trend starts. So now Antiochus is getting money he needs the money. He's desperate for money, so he's happy with that. Number two is he promises him that look, the Eden are they're not Hellenizing, they're not becoming strong, and they're not Hellenizing. I'm a Hellenist. I am going to promote Hellenism in Eretz Yisrael, and I'm going to build a gymnasium in Yerushalayim. That's my agenda. We're going to build a gymnasium in Yerushalayim. Now, after Antiochus' defeat over here, he's trying to save face besides in battle, so he's now going to build an empire. He's got Eretz Yisrael, so he's got all of this. He's going to build an empire. It's going to be mamish, Shemula Teferes. He's going to have a beautiful, he's going to keep the country, he's not going to war again, but he invests that koyach of the defeat into promoting Hellenism. He's going to have the most Hellenist of Hellenist empires between all he's still got the biggest area, yeah? And between all the Hellenist kings, he's going to have the biggest of the biggest empire. The best of the best. Here he has a fellow, comes, he's not only giving him money, this Jason, he's not only giving him money, he's telling him, I'm going to build I'm going to build this, I'm going to allow for Yevonishkeit to come to the Beis Hamikdash. To come to Yerushalayim. So he accepts it. Antiochus accepts it. Then Jason comes back. And Chonya, let me back up. Chonya, by the way, is put in prison. He arrives to Antiochus, he's put in prison because they're trying to investigate, is he sympathetic to Mitzrayim? Is he talking sympathetic? But Poyo, he comes, Jason gets it. Chonya is let out once he realizes it's not an issue anymore. Anyway, Chonya gets it. Chonya runs to Mitzrayim, Taka. Jason gets it, and Jason becomes a Kohen Gadol, and he begins to build up Greek stuff in Eretz Yisrael. He gives permission in Yerushalayim for things to happen. Jason is not, I should reiterate, Jason is not an extreme Messiavni. He's a Messiavni. He would like to see the option. The dogmas, to use an example, it's only an example. I'm not comparing. I'm giving an example. The dogmas today in Eretz Yisrael, you have a machloikas. Let's say when it comes to Shabbos, no one's forcing you to go shopping on Shabbos. No one's forcing you to open your store on Shabbos. Should you stop other people from opening their stores? Should roads be closed on Shabbos in Eretz Yisrael? This is should buses, if there's a bus driver that's not even a Yid, or a bus driver that drives on Shabbos, should the state force him not to drive on Shabbos? Should the buses work? Should the trains work? Could you have the option? So Machloek is going on since the founding, since Machloek is going on for all these years in Eretz Yisrael. An argument. Machloekas tends to make it into two correct sides. So let's put it. It's a famous argument, yeah. And they're ripping themselves apart over it. And this is what's going on in Eretz Yisrael at the time. Jason is not saying no Yiddishkeit. Jason is saying also Goyishkeit. And he builds in Yerushalayim, very, very close to the Beis HaMikdash, he builds a gymnasium. And remember, gymnasium, by the way, with no Avodah Zarah. With no Avodah Zarah in this gymnasium. So he says, look, Psharis, we're giving the option of Avodah Zarah, Yerushalayim, no Avodah Zarah. But you want to go do sports? Go do sports. You want to learn das? Go learn, go sing. That's it. And he builds it, and this goes on in Yerushalayim. The Chacham are very, very angry. There's not much the Chacham could do because Koyach Gashmi they don't have. The problem is, as in all these things, Jason is not extreme enough. Because he's not forcing everybody to become endless. You still have Yidden with beards and payas walking down the street, coming to the Beis HaMikdash, doing the Avodah, the Mishmaris are working, things are happening. From a Yidden are coming the whole time. People at the Bati Medrash are full. People are davening. People are learning. You still have people who don't believe in, to use today's terminology, you have people that don't believe in science. Not they don't believe in science. There's a thing as belief in science. If it's science, it's not a belief. Yeah. There's the fact of science. They might not believe in the narrative in every part of the narrative, right? But that's a different. It's a totally different discussion. That's not to say that narrative is always wrong. By the way, it's not to say at all, right? But anyway, it's just to say that narrative is not always narrative is of human creation, and therefore. Could very well be wrong. And you see this the whole time. Look what's been going on over the last year when it comes to medical things, where one thing was taught us as a fact, this is going to help you, or this is not going to help you. Now they find out that actually it does help, or that what they thought did help doesn't help. And so you see how understanding evolves. We obviously listen to the doctors, right? And obviously think, but it doesn't mean that that there isn't room. We listen to the doctors because we're also human, yeah. But that doesn't mean anyway. The point is, I don't want to get off. I'm not getting off subject. The point I'm trying to explain over here is that because Jason is not extreme enough. So Shimon now goes and sends after 3 years. Jason has his problems, and he travels again. He also travels to. No, I might have made a mistake. It could be even that Choni didn't travel to Mitzrayim the first time. Could be Choni didn't travel to Antiochus the first time. Actually, I could be making a mistake. I'm not sure if Choni travels to it's a technicality. It doesn't matter so much to the point of it. But Jason, if I'm not mistaken, it's not Choni that travels. I think Jason is the one that ends up traveled. I think Choni was pushed away right at the beginning. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I have to look it up again. It's not together now. The point is, this Shimon now sends his own brother. Shimon sends his own brother, who's not even a Kohen, by the name of Melanius. He sends him to. I apologize. 1 second. He has to pay a tax every 3 years. Jason promises Antiochus that every 3 years he's going to give him money. So after 3 years, he has to finish paying off the debt of the first time he becomes Kohen Gadol, and he has to pay him off, and then he has another 3 year stint. He can't leave at the moment. Jason can't leave at the moment. Whatever, people were upset with him. The Frumme were upset with him, and nobody was happy with him. The Frumme were upset with him that he's doing this. The Freie were upset with him that he wasn't extreme enough. He wasn't getting rid of Yiddishkeit. He was only allowing Goyishkeit. Yeah. So he sends a shliach. Instead of him, he sends a shliach called Melanius. Melanius, Shimon's brother. Why he sends his political rival's brother, Veisachnish. But Poyol, Melanius comes to Antiochus, and he bribes him more than Jason, and he tells him, "Look, Jason's going to give you 300. I'm going to give you, I think 300. So whatever, I'm going to give you more. Plus, Jason is lying to you. He tells you the Beis Hamikdash doesn't have any money. I'm telling you the Beis Hamikdash has huge treasures, and I will open the treasure house for you for the Beis Hamikdash. We'll deal with it." And Antiochus had already tried to take things from the Beis Hamikdash. The Medrash says he had already tried, and he wasn't successful. But Poyol, he tells him, the Beis Hamikdash has loads of money. I'll give you from the Beis Hamikdash. So this Melanius tells him, Antiochus says, hey, hold on a second. I'm going to get more money plus the spoils of the Beis Hamikdash, the money of the Beis Hamikdash, which Antiochus needs so badly to pay off Rome and to pay off his debts. And Bechlal is building up the country. So he says, no problem. Oh, he's Jason. Now Melanius comes. Melanius comes, kicks away Jason, and and he gets the job. So now you have a Kohen Gadol that's not even a Kohen. Some say he was a Kohen, but it seems to be that he wasn't a Kohen. As he seems to be ungenommen. You have a Kohen Gadol, not a Kohen, who he's not responsible for this. But he can't pay the debt. He ends up not being able to pay it, and he goes through. If I can find, here you have a list of the Kohenim Gedolim from. Here we go. Chanye, then you got Jason, then you got Melanius, then you've got He doesn't get it. He goes to here. Bekitzer. This is what's going on. This is what's going on at the time in Eretz Yisrael. You need to recall. I forgot how you make. Somewhere here's how you make the slideshow. Slideshow. From current slide. Good. Okay. Now. Okay, that's what's going on here at the time. Antiochus, now who has control over the Yidden are the extreme Hellenists, extreme modern thinkers, new age people, and they have the control, and they're cracking down on Yiddishkeit. They're not just Antiochus. The Poyol Antiochus ends up having to come into Eretz Yisrael. Let's not get into the whole. He wants to come. He wants to get the spoils. He wants to get money from the Beis Hamikdash. He wants to. There's a lot to. He comes to the Beis Hamikdash and he takes over the Beis Hamikdash. He closes down the whole thing. Antiochus comes in. Until now, there was a major milchama against Yiddishkeit going on from the Yidden in Eretz Yisrael, in Yerushalayim. But what's Antiochus' business? He's getting his money, or then he stopped. He's not getting his money. Antiochus ends up after this defeat of Mitzrayim, after a few things, he ends up he's called in. Antiochus is called in by the Yidden for backup to help with the situation, because the Yidden are not the Frume Yidden are not listening to the new decrees of the Messiah. So Antiochus walks into the Beis Hamikdash. And he closes the whole thing down. He closed the whole thing down on Chof Hei Kislev. Now, a group of Yidden, led by Matisyo Ubonov, a group of Yidden, trying to see if we can find a bit bigger the picture. I'm not sure we do. Not sure if we can. Not sure if we have it here. A group of Yidden. Okay, a group of Yidden. They run to Midbar Yehuda. They run to here, and they start keeping Torah mitzvahs in secret. So I apologize. I'm back up. So they leave Yerushalayim. Matisyo, or one of a lot of Yidden, they leave Yerushalayim and they go to near Yerushalayim, a place called Modi'in. And over there they keep Torah mitzvahs, because in the meantime the redifus against the Shmiras Hadas is going on in Yerushalayim. I have to reiterate again. This millennium becomes the thing. He begins to crack down on Yiddishkeit. Shano a klal. I'll tell you a klal. Redifus to Yidden. Redifus on Yidden itself is brought on by Goyim. Goyim are roidif the lives of Yidden. Redifus to Yiddishkeit is almost always, through history, has almost always been brought on by Yidden. The Goyim have gotten involved. If you look at Russia, the dogma, okay, that was different. If you look at the communism, was different because it happened to be that there was Yidden, that they were involved, that they roped in the Yidden because they mamish knew the community durch und durch. But the Yiddish communists were the ones that were roid of Yiddishkeit. But not only that, the very often the redifus to Yiddishkeit comes the ones that bring in the authorities to deal with the problems in Yiddish, with the problems. The one that deals with bringing the authorities that those authorities then create the problems for Yiddishkeit are the Yidden who are creating problems for Yiddishkeit. You understand what I'm saying? The redifus to Yidden is from Goyim. The ones that kill Yidden are Goyim. The ones that try to kill Yiddishkeit, more often than not in history, has been the Yidden themselves. They bring in the Goyim, who then turn it into, very often, redifus against Yidden in general. It generally backfires on everybody, but this is what's going on. This is what goes on throughout history. So, not Melanius. Melanius is Malamakim. He is the one that brings in Antiochus to help out over here. The Yidden are not listening. So the Yidden leave Yerushalayim because over there the Fruma leave Yerushalayim, what they call in those days the Chassidim. The Chassidim leave Yerushalayim because it's too much for them in Yerushalayim. They move to Modi'in. They come to Modi'in, they start keeping mitzvahs. Mitamol one day comes in a group of soldiers, of Roman soldiers, of Greek soldiers. Everybody over there they have to build a base tifla for the Avodah Zarah. Zeus, not sure why he couldn't find at least a respectable name. Antiochus, but his name was Antiochus, I suppose. Didn't know what respectable names were. But he's because he's trying to Hellenize the whole thing. He wants to have this beautiful Hellenist seichel and active people, and so he brings in these. So suddenly, Mitamol, Yidden are living there quietly from Yidden. They're living in Modi'in. They're not even in the capital. They're not in Yerushalayim anymore. By that time, Yerushalayim, before even Melanius, Yerushalayim was sending Yidden to the Olympics. That's how much they had seeped in, but it wasn't enough because there was Yidden that was still from. They go to Modi'in. They run to Modi'in. They come to Modi'in. And for this was too much Matasyo. The Beis HaMikdash is already no avoid in the Beis HaMikdash for months. That didn't create the revolt. It wasn't enough to create the revolt that the Beis HaMikdash was closed down. The Beis HaMikdash was closed down. There was a statue of the Zeus in the Beis HaMikdash. It became a Beis Avodah Zarah. It became a Beis Avodah Zarah, the Beis HaMikdash. They stopped the Avodah. They were big makriv korbanos, Goyim or Yidden that were not from Hellenist Yidden, would be makriv korbanos to Avodah Zarah. That every single day, Matasyo ran away. He ran away once. At least we'll keep Yiddishkeit over here in this corner. The pearl they come in, and for this was too much. And Matasyo gave a speech. He stood up. Matasyo was close to 80 years old at the time. He was either the Kohen Gadol, or he was the son of Yochanan Kohen Gadol. It's a machloikus, but he stands up and he gives a speech. He's definitely a Kohen, and he tells everybody, "Peshum panav not. They're not being makriv. They wanted they should be makriv a chazer to this breathing. Peshum panav not." They asked him to do it. He said no, and he told everybody not to do it. One guy stands up and he did it. He was makriv. Now, what you're doing over here, what's happening over here is this person's passion defying. Here it becomes a real shaila. How much koyach does Matasyo, the Kohen, perhaps even the Kohen Gadol, the leader, the spiritual leader of the Yidden in this location, in this area at the time, how much koyach, if he doesn't respond now, then he's lost everything, and everything falls apart. No one's going to listen to him. So Matasyo, he doesn't think twice. He takes a sword and he kills the seed that was makriv the carbon, kills the soldiers, the poil. He's now killed Greek soldiers. He's killed a person for being makriv. He's the way Antiochus would look at it. He's killed a he's insulted this Avodah Zarah, he's insulted the God. So Matisyahu runs away, Matisyahu, Bonov, and a whole group of people, they run away to Midbar Yehuda, and they hide in the mountains. They hide in the caves, and that's when the story starts. That's when the story begins. Now, they hide. The Greeks come looking for them, and they win a bunch of battles. It would be very, very interesting. You should do it at one point. You should go through this. There's a lot of different battles. We'll go through it in a minute, but I want to mention another thing. They come to the Beis Hamikdash. Let me mention something. Let me back up a minute because it was important, and I forgot it. Remember, we discussed the chayil. We discussed yesterday the chayil. Yeah, the chayil. The benefit of those that didn't hear yesterday's, the chayil was there was a wall on the Harabayis until here goyim could come. Anybody could come, but from the chayil was only Yidden were able to go. If you see the chayil has it's a wall with little doors, and little things coming up. And what were these things? So these things, we found the archaeology. We found what it was. We know it's already we knew this all along, but they even found the archaeology. Big signs written in Goyish language, written in Greek. It's written for the Goyim. It says basically, from here, Goyim can't come. No entry, only entries to Jews from here. Because of Kedushas, because of Heiligkeit. So you see it over there, you see what it would have looked like. You see it over here in the models. And this is what it was. Says the Mishnah in Midas. We discussed this yesterday, but let's see it from the inside today. Says the Mishnah in Midas that the Menu is talking about the Gemara it's talking about Mishnah Mishnah Gimel is talking about the talking about the Beis Hamikdash and the Beis Hamikdash. Lefnim Menu there was a Soire Gavoya Torah Tvachim. Okay, this wall was 10 Tvachim high. The kings of Greece made these. They broke them. They broke it over. And then that's why we made 13 Mishnachavoyas. Now, why was it done? And why was this line there? So it was. The Rambam says that also to do besides everything else that had to do with being able to carry. If it was 10 tefachim high, so it means that you were able to carry when it came to Chanuka to Korban Pesach, and you needed to go on to carry on here. You can't carry over here, but you could still carry into here because this is a wall. But Paul says it's Yom Tov, and many others, not the only one. I just brought it Yom Tov over here. So he writes that even the Chachmei are not Tzrim. Even the Chachmei are not Tzrim. Even the Christian Chachamim know that the reason why there was a chayil was because only till there was only because that's where the goyim could go to. Here we go. Why was this wall there? It wasn't because only to allow people to carry. There was a reason for it, and the reason for it was this is a machloikas. Why exactly was there? But now they found the signs that say goyim can't come past it. And that's why the Torah is saying, look at this. Here's the reason. What's the reason why? Why it was? Sorry, and he starts this. And therefore, this is the reason why the Greeks broke these things open. Why did they break it? Because it was made in order to ensure that the Greeks don't come inside more. Yeah, okay. The reason why the Greeks broke it was simple. In the Greek philosophy, there's no such thing as kedusha. Why can't a guy go into the Beis Hamikdash? Why not? What are we, racist? Chas v'shalom, nothing to do with that. It's not because the guy is a bad person. It's because it's kedusha. It's a certain heiligkeit. The Kohen Gadol is the holiest, and therefore he's allowed to go in the Kodesh HaKadoshim once a year. He didn't have a level of holiness. We have a level of holiness higher than the Goyim, and therefore, when it comes to going into the holy, the Goyim can come to here, and the Yidden can go past there. But boy, all them, if you want to say, what does that mean? It's ridiculous. Everybody, we're all Ne'omim, we're all Medaber. Those are Medaber Yisrael. Everyone's Medaber according to the Greeks. There's only Medaber. We're all the same, and therefore the Greeks have bothered them. This war was a major issue for the Greeks because this war meant that there's holiness, that there's kedusha. I'm talking ideologically. So when the Greeks come into the Beis Hamikdash, When Antiochus comes into the Beis Senzi, he sends his general to come take over the Beis Hamikdash. The first thing they do is they break down. They make big breakage. They break down this wall. They don't have to break the whole thing down. They have to get rid of it enough. It's not any more doors of going in. It's often there's parts left, but they break it down. There's no such thing. Yeah, Alexander went in. Like I explained to you yesterday, Alexander went in. What do you mean a goy can't go in? It's no difference in a yid and a goy, according to them. And so they broke this down. Now, I should mention they broke this down, Heikislev or whatever, before the Avodah stopped. A few weeks before the Avodah stopped. A couple of weeks later is when the Avodah stops and they put up their Avodah Zarah. Okay, now going back, so he has to run away. Matisyahu runs away. Matisyahu runs to Modi'in. They come chasing. They come forcing everybody to become Siyavnim over there. So he kills and he runs to the mountains. And then begins all the battles. To go through the extent of the battles, I'm going to show you like this. There was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4 battles. 4 battles until the Nes of Chanuka. It's a period of 3 years where they're fighting. It's war after war. I would love to go into it, but I don't want to lose the focus of what we're discussing. Okay, we're discussing the real issue. The real issue is the Yidden trying to force the stoppage of Yiddishkeit. It's not that they themselves want to be Nisyavnim, which is a problem in and of itself. And it didn't even start. It started but it didn't even the battles, the battles didn't start when they built the gymnasium in Yerushalayim. It started when they insisted that everybody should go to the gymnasium. They tried to convince you that you're wrong for keeping mitzvahs. But Paul, I'm going to show you. I just want to show you 3 things to point something out. Okay. Number one is there's a couple of battles until finally Yehuda is able to conquer, to win back the Beis Hamikdash. Though he's able to win back the Beis Hamikdash, right next to, I'm trying to see if I can find it here. Right now, here's a map of the old city of Yerushalayim from says the year, I think, somewhere, the early 1900s, I think. But if you see the old city of Yerushalayim, is Machlok is what it says. But here is going to be here's the Beis Hamikdash. So right next to the Beis Hamikdash, there was a Akra. Akra was, here's the ruins. They believe that these are the ruins. It was a massive, here we go, the Chakra. Here's the Beis Hamikdash. It's either here or here, but Mamash attached to the Beis Hamikdash, a group of Mesyavnim run there. After Yehuda Maccabi takes over Yerushalayim, they run there, and this remains fortified for a very long time. They have ways of getting in food, and they are a fully fortified city of serious Mesyavnim that are killing. When Yidden would come to the Beis Hamikdash, they would shoot them. It takes a very long time until they get rid of this. Okay? But my point is, what I'm trying to say is that there's battle after battle. Yehuda wins one battle. They win one battle. They win a second battle, win a third battle. Not battles, wars. Not just battles, wars, which means more than one battle. And Nes after Nes happens until finally they're able to take over the Beis Hamikdash. 3 years after they're kicked out, but the war itself goes on for 2.5 years. Till they manage to take it over. They take it over, they clean it. And everything is tummy. When they came in, they got a shock. Things were overgrown. It took them, the first thing they redid was rebuilt the Chayil. They rebuilt this wall, Yidden Goyim, okay? And they cleaned up the whole place. They cleaned it all up. And they were Matayr. They had to get rid of the Mizbeach, because it was, the Mizbeach was Tameh. Question what to do with it. They put the stones on the side. They built another Mizbeach. And the morning of Chav Hei is when they were Makriv Korbanos the first time. That's when, and they were Makriv Korbanos the first time, and they were Koiveya, they were Mechanech, the Beis Hamikdash again. It's been lying empty for 3 years, or worse, or they were serving Avodah Zarah in their mamash, seemingly not for all the 3 years, but it was filthy, it was dirty, there was Avodah Zarah over there, they cleaned out all the Avodah Zarah, they got a lot of Yidden together to do this, and they did it in a day. They cleaned it in a day, and Chafei by day, in the morning, they were Makriv Korbanos, and they were Koiveya, 7 days of chinuch hamizbeach. 7 days of where they, according to one of the sources, they shook dalad minim also in those 7 days. They made the 7-day celebration of rededication. Rededication. I'm going to mention the war doesn't stop. You see attached, there's still the chakra. Okay, there are still goyim. This is, by the way, it's a different period of time, obviously, a different time period. I brought this just to show the chayil. I'm trying to explain. It's either here or here, seemingly not here, because over here eventually was chakra still got the things, and over here eventually was the mikveh. So but the point is that they've still got major problems, and all they've conquered at that time is less than this. Now, if you think about it, here's all Eretz Yisrael. They haven't conquered all Eretz Yisrael. Yehuda is conquered by the time Yehuda is killed in battle. Yehuda's king for 6 years. By the time Yehuda conquered the battle, he's in control of this. Okay, but before that, still. Now, why does there have to be the nest of the natives? Now, here's the. Remember, the Yevonim are fighting. The Yevonim are fighting. It's the whole thing is a spiritual fight. It ends up being a very physical fight, war where people are killed, but it's a spiritual fight that the Yidden would have acted, whatever. Yeah, it's a Mochama Ruchnis. It is a Mochama Ruchnis. It's a Mochama against Kedusha by Goyim and by Yidden. And the reason it got physical and everything is because the Yidden brought in the Goyim to insist on this battle of Kedusha, against Kedusha. Why did it have to be the Ness of Natives? It's a very interesting thing. Why did it have to happen? They didn't have everything at the time anyway. They weren't going to be able to do all the avodah. Some of the Mizbeach HaZov was taken already, had been taken. I'm not sure if the menorah was in existence or if the menorah was taken. Whatever the case, they had to build a new one. They built one out of wood. Eventually, they built one out of silver. Eventually, they built some say pipes, some say wood. Eventually, they built one out of silver. Eventually, they had enough money to build one out of gold, but it took a long time. So they were dedicating the Mizbeach. They didn't have to wait. The reason why the Ness of Natives happened is a lot of different explanations to the reason why the Ness, the reason why the Eibush need, the reason why there was a point in the Ness is what was the reason for the Ness. But Poyol, it was a Mochama Ruchnis. It was a Mochama Ruchnis. And the Nitzochen, now that's why they were Koiveya. Why were they Koiveya? The next year, let me move on and then we'll answer the question, yeah? The next year, they're ready in battle again. Yehuda fortifies the city very, very strongly. Yehuda fortifies Yerushalayim very strongly. They come in again, okay? After he wins Beis HaMikdash, Antiochus dies a little bit later. There becomes an entirely new battle, and that's the one where Elazar is killed. Then there's battle. The battles continue. So Elazar is killed. They come out again against Eretz Yisrael. Now Yehuda, the Misyavnim, they want to be live and let live. They want to be let to live by themselves. And Yehuda is very, very firm to eradicate this Goyishkeit from Yerushalayim legamri. He doesn't allow the theater. This thing. He is fire. He's shumpan away for not kedusha all the way through. Yehuda is very, very strong about that in this. So where Misyavnim, he gets rid of the Chakra. Eventually, he battles the Chakra, which is a very difficult war, and he levels it and he gets rid of it. But these are battles. My point is that by Chanuka the battle doesn't stop. The wars don't stop. This is the Gemara. The famous question of the Gemara is my Chanuka, and Rashi says, what was the Ness? There was different things. But Chanuka was 7 days. We could 7 days of Halal V'Idah, which they actually made 8 days of Halal V'Idah. And the reason why there was a Ness of Neiris was because this Mochama was a Mochama Ruchni. And therefore, in Gashmias, the Eibishter made that there should be a Nitzochen. There should be a Nitzochen. What's the Gashmiastic in Nitzochen? What is it? The Nitzochen of the Ness of the Neiris. But the reason why the Ness of the Neiris is important is because this isn't a technical battle that they got back. Look at the history. The whole thing was against Kedusha. I'm not talking here. The whole thing was against Kedusha. Alexander had no problem with Jewish philosophy as long as it was philosophy, as long as there was no emunah, as long as there was no hechaf and seichel involved. None of them ever had that problem with Yiddishkeit. They could teach Kabbalah alongside, Kabbalah, but I'm saying like today, you could teach Kabbalah alongside some other crazy philosophy, and this is the way the Jews say it, and this is the way these people say it. It wasn't. And therefore, after they won the Beis Hamikdash, after they got the Beis Hamikdash, they were 7 days of Halal Voidah, 7 days of Chanuka Samizbeach, and the next year, and there happens a nest with the neighbors that didn't have to happen. But the Eibishter makes the nest of the neighbors. Nothing has to happen. But I'm saying they could have dedicated the Beis Hamikdash without the nest of the neighbors. But the Eibishter makes the nest of the neighbors, and to show that this is a Muhammad, that you need in order to fight. In other words, how are we fighting this? With the number 8. With Shemen, but with the number 8, with the Hechef and Seichel. The next year, they were Koiveya on, I should mention something interesting. Okay. I should mention something interesting that in a lot of it's in the dog, in Megillah, in the Sefer HaMakkabim, Aleph and Beis, it doesn't have the Ness of the Neiris, because so in Eretz Yisrael it wasn't as big a Chiddush. Till the end of Shimon HaTzadik, there was the Ner Ma'aravi. The Ner Ma'aravi lasted the Derech Ness, didn't go out. The Ner Ma'aravi. So it was only a recent thing, only the last 100 years that Ness had stopped. So it wasn't even a Welt's Chiddush that the candles burnt for 8 days. That the candles didn't stop. It was going back to the original Ness that was always along in the Beis Hamikdash. So my point is this: the Milchama was a Milchama to get rid of Kedusha, and therefore the Nitzachon was an 8. The Nitzachon was, nature, things work in cycles. So there's a cycle of 7. There is no cycle of 8. There's a cycle of 7. So if there's, just like there's a cycle of 10, so number 11 would be out of that cycle. There's a cycle of 7, and number 8 is outside of that cycle. It's higher than nature. And therefore the Ness of the Nitzachon had to be a Ness of higher than nature. They were commemorating, they took the part of the Ness that was higher than nature, and that was what they were conveying. That was the Gashmistic reflection of that Ness. Again, those battles continue for years. After 6 years of control, Yehuda's killed in battle. Yehuda's killed in battle. You could see all these stars, all these things are all different Muhammads that happen. So here is where it was by Yehuda. After Yehuda is killed, Yonason, his brother Yonason, takes over. And then they managed to extend all the way to here. This is not a lot. This is not a big land. Yeah, they managed to extend all the way to here. And then after Yehuda, after Yonason dies, Yonason's lifted. And after that, his brother Shimon takes over. And Shimon gets also this little bit. I'll show you here at the end. Here is the sikkim of the Malachim, the Kshedim. After this already, they go off. Melazar is one that's killed under the elephant. Yehud is killed in one battle. Yochanan is killed in another battle. Yochanan was never in control, and Yochanan was never king. Then Yonason, Shimon is killed by his son-in-law, who wants to take over. I believe then his Shimon's son, Yochanan Hyrcanus, takes over after that. But Poil, I think what we've explained over here clearly is that the battle was a battle trying to force Yidden not to the Yiddishkeit. What we've learned from here, what we see throughout history, that number one is that there is higher than Seichel. We've seen even by the beginning of philosophy, they receive things from higher than Seichel. There is higher than Seichel. The philosophers don't like it. And they build up Seichel to non-Seichel extremes. Okay? But we've seen over here the problem being the emphasis on only what I understand is real. The emphasis on me, my body, the way I am, fun, that the overemphasis, okay, on that. We've seen the extremism where that leads to, which is not that allow me. We see from there that then becomes a problem of it's not only allow me to make things. It's you must. I am going to make sure that you must think like I do. You must. It's not that I'll try and convince you not to serve the Eibishter. You're not allowed to serve the Eibishter. You're primitive, you're stupid, you're idiotic for serving the Eibishter. And then bringing in others to try and enforce that. This is the problem. The problem with Misyavnim or with Yavon, the problem with the Greek way of life is that they don't acknowledge Asadah Hecher, which is stupid. Ultimately, really, it's stupid not to acknowledge that as Hecher. But they don't acknowledge that as Hecher. And the problem of Chanuka was trying to force others to agree with you as Nishta Hecher. Or that this is the peak of humanity. This is what everybody needs to do. You have to live according to according to what I consider important. We've seen, we unfortunately, this thing repeats itself and repeats itself and repeats itself, and we need to learn. We need to learn from history. Okay. After Chanukah, we will take this Akadama and we will use one story in the history of Chabad, in the history of the Tzemach Tzedek, and how Tzemach Tzedek dealt with a challenge similar to this. And we'll continue to learn this concept through that